I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't emotionally prepared for it. But there it was, sitting neatly on the kitchen counter, standing out among unpaid bills and junk mail from insurance companies. A cream-colored envelope, embossed with delicate floral patterns and gold lettering that shimmered under the light. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. No one sends this kind of envelope unless it's a wedding. And just as I thought, when I opened it, my hands still slightly trembling, the first line that hit my eyes was, "We are pleased to invite you to the wedding of Kyle Reynolds and Sabrina Marks." Kyle Reynolds, the name I once scribbled endlessly on random notepads. The man who held my hand through the coldest winter of my life. The man who promised never to let go. And then became the first one to do just that. I stared at the invitation for a long time. My mind went blank. Part of me wanted to crumple it and throw it straight into the trash. But another part, the weaker, more foolishly curious part, whispered, "Go. Maybe it'll give you closure." Kyle and I broke up nearly 2 years ago. There was no big drama, no betrayal. One day, he sat across from me at our favorite coffee shop, looked at me with those empty eyes, and simply said, "I don't think I love you anymore." That was it. It took me over a year to sleep through the night without dreaming of him. Every time I passed by the breakfast place we used to go to, something inside me ached. But eventually I stopped looking back. I started living again. Not perfectly but peacefully. Until today. The wedding was held at an upscale resort just outside the city. One of those venues that scream money, where even the air feels expensive. I didn't know why I agreed to go. Maybe I wanted to see what kind of life Kyle had now. Or maybe deep down, I just wanted to prove something. To him, to his new bride, and to myself. I picked a simple but elegant navy blue dress, flattering but not flashy. I did my makeup light, my hair neat, and wore the pearl earrings my mother gave me for my 25th birthday. Looking in the mirror, I told myself, "You're fine. You've moved on." When I arrived, the ceremony was just about to start. The entrance arch was adorned with white and gold flowers, and a sign with the couple's names looked like it was pulled straight from a wedding magazine. Laughter and sparkling chatter filled the air. Dresses shimmered under the sun, and everything looked like it had been curated for a dream wedding. I walked in, accepted a glass of champagne from a young waitress, and searched for my seat. When I read the seating chart, my heart sank. My name was at table 18, the last one, right next to the kitchen. Worse, they'd even spelled my name wrong. Jessica with a K, not a C. I smiled to myself. It's okay. Just a name. Not a big deal. I sat down and looked around. I didn't recognize anyone. A middle-aged couple. Some young people who were probably Kyle's co-workers. And a distant uncle who was already dozing off. Table 18 felt like a forgotten corner, quiet and far removed from the party. Then the ceremony began. Kyle walked out first in a tailored tuxedo, still as handsome as I remembered. I looked at him and felt nothing. Not pain. Not love. Just distance. He was no longer the man I once knew. He now belonged to someone else. And then the bride appeared. Sabrina. She was stunning. So stunning, the room actually went silent. Her fishtail gown hugged her figure. Her veil flowed like mist. And her makeup looked like it belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine. She smiled, radiant and confident, and when her eyes found mine, just for a second, she squinted ever so slightly. It wasn't a welcoming smile. It was a triumphant smirk. They exchanged vows. They kissed. Applause filled the room. I clapped too, out of reflex. My emotions swirled inside me, like watching a play where I used to be the lead actress. And now I was just part of the silent crowd. The reception began. Plates of food were brought out. Champagne glasses were refilled endlessly. I kept a calm face, trying not to look too out of place. I didn't plan to stay long. I just wanted to keep my dignity intact, then quietly slip away. But that wasn't what happened. It was time for speeches. The bride's parents, the groom's best friend, a charming MC. Everything unfolded like a well-rehearsed script. And then Sabrina took the microphone. A wine glass in one hand, the mic in the other. Her smile dazzling under the lights. "First of all," she began, her voice sweet but calculated, "I want to thank everyone here today. A wedding is such a meaningful moment. Not just for the couple, but for everyone who's ever been a part of their journey. People nodded, smiling. And it's especially touching, she continued, to have even past relationships present. Those who once thought they were the forever, but were really just pit stops. The room paused. I froze. Sabrina sipped her wine with a soft chuckle, then added, "But I believe everything happens for a reason. Someone once told me, true love never needs to be begged for. And today, I'm grateful that Kyle and I have nothing left to beg for." A few awkward laughs. A few confused glances. I sat there, fingers wrapped tight around my water glass, a storm building inside me. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly who she was referring to. And she knew that I knew. That wasn't gratitude. That was a sugar-coated dagger to the chest. I considered standing up and leaving. But before I could, a soft voice behind me spoke. "Don't let her get to you." I turned. It was a young waitress, big brown eyes, curly hair tied in a bun, standing by with an empty tray. She leaned down and whispered, "I know what happened. You don't deserve this." I blinked. "Who are you?" She smiled faintly, voice low but steady. "I used to work at a restaurant where Kyle often came in, with a woman who wasn't Sabrina. This was when you two were still dating. I remember because she wore a bracelet with J+K engraved on it." I stopped breathing for a moment. That bracelet. Kyle gave it to me for our 3rd anniversary. I never took it off, until the day he left. The waitress gave me a soft, knowing smile. "You didn't lose him. You were spared. But if you stay, you might learn more. And for the first time in a long while, you'll see that you weren't the one who lost." I stared at her, speechless. In a room filled with laughter and music, her words cut through like a sharp blade of truth. And suddenly, I realized something very simple. Sometimes, the winner isn't the one in the wedding gown. It's the woman strong enough to stay and listen to the rest of the story. I sat frozen at table 18, while the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft jazz music continued swirling through the glamorous ballroom. But for me, it was as if everything had been muted. The words of that young waitress echoed in my mind like a gentle but piercing truth. "I know what happened. You didn't deserve this." I turned to look at her, still weaving between the tables with practiced grace, a tray in hand, a polite smile on her lips. But her eyes, there was something in them that wouldn't let me look away. It wasn't pity. It was the gaze of someone who had seen things others hadn't. Someone who knew more than she was allowed to say. I took a deep breath. For the first time that night, I felt like maybe I wasn't just an invisible guest shoved in the back corner. I stood up and quietly walked toward the service area, away from the crowd, where the light faded and the music softened. She was arranging dessert plates when I found her. I waited a moment before speaking. "Can you tell me more?" I asked. "About the bracelet. About what happened with Kyle." She looked up, surprised at first, but calm. "You really want to know everything?" I nodded. "I think I deserve to." Her name was Mia. She had worked as a server at a restaurant Kyle often visited. Not with me, but with someone else. A woman with blonde hair, simple clothes, and a closeness with Kyle that was far too intimate to be innocent. Mia remembered how they laughed, sat close, sometimes kissed when they thought no one was watching. And on that woman's wrist, always, a silver bracelet engraved with J+K forever. "I saw you once," Mia said. "When he came in with you. That's how I knew you were the real owner of that bracelet. Not her." I stood there, hands gripping my clutch. It was like flipping open a book I thought I'd already finished, only to discover a secret chapter at the end. All those late nights Kyle came home without explanation, the missed calls, the cold hugs. It all made sense now. Kyle had cheated on me. Not just emotionally. Not just once. Probably for months, maybe longer. I returned to the reception hall with a head full of truths, and a heart burning with clarity. Suddenly, the pristine flowers looked artificial. The jazz music felt hollow. And the bride's radiant smile, Sabrina, now seemed sharp, calculated, and cold. After her thinly veiled jab at me during her speech, Sabrina continued to float around the ballroom like a perfect hostess. She laughed, posed for pictures, and thanked guests with practiced charm. Eventually, she made her way to my table. "Jessica, right?" she said sweetly, her eyes flickering with amusement. "It's brave of you to come today. Maybe you were looking for closure. I smiled, lifting my water glass as if to toast. Not quite. I came to witness the beginning of someone else's ending. She blinked, caught off guard. Before she could respond, I stood up and walked toward the front of the hall, where the microphone was still open from the speeches. The spotlight had moved on, but I was about to take it back. "Excuse me," I said clearly enough to hush the crowd. "May I say a few words? Just a toast, really?" All eyes turned toward me, some curious, some confused. Kyle stood a few feet away, his smile quickly fading. I took the mic, looked directly at the bride and groom, and spoke with calm, collected precision. "I came here today hoping to close a chapter in my life. What I didn't expect was to learn how that chapter really ended." A pause. The tension rose. Some of you might not know this, but Kyle was seeing another woman while we were still together. A woman who wore a bracelet engraved with J+K forever. A gift he once gave me. That woman wasn't me. Gasps. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Kyle's face turned pale. Sabrina's smile vanished, replaced by suspicion and something colder, fear. I kept going, steady and unwavering. I've spent years blaming myself, thinking maybe I wasn't enough. But today I realized I was just the only one being honest in a story full of lies. I gently set the mic down. I didn't need to shout. The silence said everything. I walked out of the venue slowly, with no need to look back. The night air was cool, refreshing, like it had been waiting just for me. I heard someone call my name from behind, but I didn't stop. I had my closure. And more than that, I had reclaimed myself. Outside the event hall, Mia was waiting near the catering truck, sipping a glass of orange juice. She smiled when she saw me. "I'm guessing you said what you needed to say." I nodded, laughing softly. You know, for 2 years I kept thinking it was my fault. That I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, something enough to keep a man. But it turns out, I was just the only one in the relationship who was actually loyal. Mia touched my arm gently. "And you're the only one brave enough to face it head on." I don't know what happened after I left. If Kyle and Sabrina argued. If her perfect wedding fell apart behind closed doors. But I do know this. For the first time in years I felt weightless. No more blame. No more longing. Just truth. And a quiet gratitude that I hadn't been the bride in a marriage built on betrayal. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment, with sunlight streaming through the window like nothing extraordinary had happened. The soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine into the room. The scent I used to love, but had forgotten. I sat at the edge of the bed, quiet for minutes, letting my body feel the steady rhythm of breathing that, for the first time in a long while, felt completely my own. I didn't cry. There were no more tears left. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because it had transformed into something gentler, a kind of quiet. Like I had survived a storm, soaked and battered but still standing, still alive. I picked up my phone. A few messages had arrived from friends, some who were there last night. One of them said just one line. "You were so brave." Another wrote. The whole hall went silent. I've never seen Kyle look like that. But nothing from Kyle. Nothing from Sabrina either. And you know what? I didn't need anything from them. Not anymore. Last night, I hadn't spoken for them. I spoke for me. For the version of myself that used to sit quietly in the shadows. Last night, I brought her into the light. The week that followed, I took a few days off work. Not because I was exhausted, but because I wanted to go somewhere, alone. No expectations. No pressure. No ghost of a relationship clinging to my shoulders. I chose a small coastal town I'd visited during college. There was a tiny cafe near the harbor called Harbor Light. I used to spend hours there, reading, writing, dreaming. And oddly enough, when I walked in after all these years, the little table by the window was still empty, as if it had been waiting for me. I sat down, ordered a cappuccino, opened my notebook. There wasn't anything specific to write about, but my hands started moving anyway. The words came like water. I loved a man who didn't know how to love anyone but himself. I forgave too many times, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid to lose something I thought was everything. But now I know, losing him wasn't a loss. It was liberation. I paused and looked out at the sea. The waves rolled and crashed with a quiet strength. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. That evening, I received a strange phone call. It was from Kyle's mother. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. After Kyle and I broke up, she slowly withdrew, perhaps to avoid taking sides. Or maybe she knew more than she ever let on. I hesitated, then picked up the call. "Jessica," she said, her voice raspy and low. "I didn't know if I should call. But I think you deserve to hear this." I stayed silent, waiting. "I want to apologize," she continued. "Because I saw the signs, the coldness, the lies, but I didn't say anything. Kyle is my son, but that doesn't excuse what he did. After what you said at the wedding, I realized you were the only one who truly loved him, without needing anything in return." My throat tightened, not with anger, but with something more vulnerable. I think a part of me had been waiting for this. For someone to see the truth I carried quietly for so long. Not Kyle, but her. A mother who once treated me like family. I answered softly. "I don't expect anything from Kyle anymore. But thank you for saying what he never did." About a month after the wedding, I received a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. If you'd let me explain, even just for a minute." It was Kyle. I stared at the screen for a long time, but I felt nothing. No rage, no sadness, just emptiness. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, not because I was bitter, but because I was strong enough to know I didn't need closure from him anymore. My silence was the closure. Time passed. I slowly started rebuilding the parts of myself I had abandoned. My yoga class, weekend hikes, journaling. I started a small blog where I shared honest stories. Not just mine, but of other women who had also risen from heartbreak. One day, I got an email from a reader. "I cried reading your story. I just left a marriage I thought was safe, but your words made me feel like I'm not alone." I sat still in front of the screen, and suddenly, all the pain I had endured felt meaningful. I hadn't just survived that relationship. I had turned my survival into light, for someone else to see their way out. And I realized, the best revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. It's becoming someone who no longer needs to be chosen. One afternoon, I returned to Harbor Light. This time, I wasn't alone. Sitting across from me was Mia, the waitress who had once whispered the truth that cracked everything open. She was now my friend. We laughed, shared stories, swapped scars like souvenirs. And I marveled at how a stranger could end up witnessing the most transformative moment of my life. I said to her, "If you hadn't spoken up that night, I'd probably still be stuck in my illusion of Kyle." She smiled. "Maybe, but I think we all eventually find our truth. You just needed a little nudge." I looked out at the ocean and smiled. No more bitterness. No more bleeding wounds. Only peace, and the final goodbye. Not for Kyle, but for the woman I used to be. The one who loved too deeply, broke too quietly, and is now standing in the sun, finally whole.